I am Ginna BB Gordon, and I'm the host of Arts and Letters for Art Presence Art Center in Jacksonville. These live stream events were created during the height of the pandemic and continue on. We kind of hope forever. It's fun. We are excited to reach out into the wider community to talk about books, art, and ideas with folks outside of Jacksonville. Our guest tonight is Lynn Ransford, author of Grandma Tell Me a Story About Bears. Lynn is a retired teacher and has a master's degree in education, 3 lifetime credentials, and is an early childhood specialist. She recently earned her naturalist certificate from the Siskiyou Field Institute in Selma, Oregon. Lynn recently published this collection of bear stories from her family's favorites, and it is the first in the series of books about her true tales. So Lynn will read a few stories from Grandma Tell Me a Story About Bears. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
Hi, how nice to have you here. I'm glad you're here with us tonight. I would like to hear a couple of words from you before you read to us. Lynn will be reading a few stories tonight on this December 10th holidays showcase about books. And we have put together a few books that we think are very giftable for the holidays. And Lynn has done a few reviews, and I have my 2 cents to add. And in between those conversations about other people's books, Lynn will be reading from Grandma Tell Me a Story About Bears. So what I'd like is a few words from you about how you came to this series of books.
Most of the impetus came from the backseat of the car on our long trips, camping trips with our youngest granddaughter. And to ease the boredom, she would say, "Tell me a story, tell me another story." And it went on and on and on. And some of them, primarily the bear stories, I told over and over. And I said, "You've heard that." And she said, "I know, but I want to hear it again." So those are the ones that I selected to start with. But the family stories are endless, just endless.
I'm glad, because they're really wonderful, and they're true stories, which is, they're not made for children bedtime stories. They're real encounters with real bears out in the real woods. So it's really very exciting. David, could you share the bear, Grandma Tell Me a Story About Bears cover with us, number 1? Love this cover. I love that bear. I want to go visit that bear.
Yeah.
So let's, for a moment too, just before you read this, you'll be reading A Bear at Bass Lake. And next, let's show the picture of the trio. And Lynn, tell us a little bit about this picture and the story.
Well, this is a picture of my dad, my younger brother, and me on our first adventure out into the wild. And we did encounter a bear on that trip. We still laugh about it, the whole family. And so it's easy to recall these events from so long ago. I can still hear all our giggles and picture us rolling on the ground.
Great. Then I would like to hear that story. So why don't you just read that for us?
All right. A Bear at Bass Lake, my first bear. Our Eagle Scout daddy was eager to show us his outdoor skills. So one summer, our parents rented a cabin at Bass Lake near Yosemite. My mother was quiet. She didn't say anything negative, but even as a child, I could tell that she was not looking forward to this vacation at a lake. My daddy, on the other hand, was very excited, promising my brother and me an opportunity to fish for the first time in our lives, and regaling us with stories of cooking over a campfire, hiking through the woods, and seeing all the stars in the sky at night. We couldn't wait. I was young, no more than 5 or 6 years old, I guess, but I still clearly remember the slippery rocks at the edge and being totally wet before I knew it. My brother must have also slipped in, or else followed me gleefully in spite of or because of all my squealing about the cold water. We were told we were going to scare the fish. I remember, as he was on all occasions, our daddy being extremely patient, this time in giving us great long instructions on the art of casting. I listened and tried to do it, but all I succeeded in hooking was the seat of my pants. My brother and I thought this was really funny. My daddy didn't. He seemed terribly concerned, not about the difficulty in dislodging a hook from my denims, but distressed at the thought of what other body parts, and not necessarily my own, I might have hooked. Though my brother and I thought the incident was hysterical, we sobered up when we found out that it ended our fishing lesson. Our daddy, a bit like the dad in the Berenstain Bears books, recovered quickly and was ready to introduce us to another outdoor adventure, cooking over the fire. The cabin we rented had an outdoor covered cooking area, sort of like a lean-to alongside one wall of the cabin. My brother and I were instructed to watch from the picnic table. We weren't supposed to be anywhere near the fire. Daddy asked, "Have you ever heard of flapjacks?" We hadn't heard that term, but quickly learned he meant pancakes. He was going to show us how he could flip them. Boy, was that entertaining. Sometimes they actually did do a somersault in midair and magically land back in the pan, but mostly they didn't. They hung in a blob over the side of the pan, making a terrible mess, or even worse, they landed on the ground. That was funnier than the hook in the seat of my pants. It was a good thing my mother was inside the cabin. I remember her being in the cabin the whole time. She spent a lot of time sweeping. Knowing my mother, I suspect she was sweeping out bugs, not only dirt. This time, though, she wasn't just quietly sweeping. She started to scream. Our mother never screamed. We knew it couldn't be pancakes on the ground that would cause her to act like that. Finally, we figured out what all her unintelligible yelling was about. A bear had come to investigate our daddy's flapjacks. It all happened so fast. Our daddy grabbed the broom from our mother's hands and somehow managed to whisk us into the cabin in a split second. No words from him, just action. The cabin door slammed and we ran to the window. We watched our daddy waving the broom wildly at the bear, shouting at it, "Shoo, shoo." My first chance to see a bear up close outside the zoo, and all I recall is a black blur. It turned and ran away from our madman daddy, who was a very big man, much taller than the bear. Daddy chased it back into the forest before we could get a good look. I have no other memories of that trip at Bass Lake. No stars, no cozy cabin sleeping or bedtime stories. I suspect our vacation lasted only that one day, the day the bear came to visit.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I think I have the illustration for that with your dad waving the broom coming up on one of your other stories. And I will point out two things about Lynn. One is that she did all of her own illustrations. There are about 35 of them, and they're just very charming. And the other is that in the first month of her release, which was just in like the end of October, right? She sold over 160 books retail. That was phenomenal. That was something unheard of in our time in the publishing business. So I'm very proud of you, very proud of your book. I think it came together really well, and I look forward to hearing the next story.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next book that we're going to talk about tonight is by the series of books by Barbara Tricarico. And I am, first I want to apologize to Barbara for misspelling your name in the poster. That was totally my fault. Her books are so stunning. David, would you show the number one, the Ashland cover? The books are so amazing that it was really hard to choose which ones to show. She has a series of them at the gallery, and these are all done by, these photographs are either done by Barbara or other local artists. And I know that our board member at Art Presence, Vivian McLeavy has some photos in one of these books. I'm really not sure which one, but they're quite stunning and cover Southern Oregon, Portland, Ashland, Mount Ashland, Central Oregon, and the Willamette Valley and the Oregon coast. They're really, really beautiful books, wonderful coffee table books. And Lynn, what did you discover about these books?
I agree. I thought that both of them belong on coffee tables or end tables in everyone's living room. Either or both, I thought would be cherished gifts for the holidays. Oregon visitors would want one as a keepsake of their time in Oregon. And those of us who live here, we never tire of the year-round beauty and diversity of scenery. And Barbara has captured it all.
Yes, she has. David, would you show the number 4, the other Ashland book? This is just, these are so beautiful. Just absolutely stunning. And what was it that you said about what were you going to suggest, Lynn, about
Yes, I thought, at first $35 seemed like so much, but I thought it really is a terrific buy, as it said, for all this collection of beautiful photos. But then I had a wicked thought. I admitted to you, I thought it was sacrilegious to think about tearing out maybe 1 or 2 of your favorite photos. They'd be perfect for framing. And I thought then you'd have a spectacular print that would be worth way more than at least 2 of Barbara's books.
I don't know what Barbara or her book production people would think about that, but I can see the sentiment because they're so stunning. These pictures are just absolutely beautiful.
And of my favorite places.
Yes. And David, before we go from Barbara's books, would you show the Southern Oregon book and then the 5A, which is the bridge photo? This is where we live. I'm so touched by these photos because there are scenes like, as you say, there are places that I've seen and many places I've never seen. And it makes me want to go explore them. So how about the last one? And really, I think that might be my choice. If I were going to destroy a book for a photo, that would be the one. I'm amazed by that photo.
And mine would be one of the Lithia Park pictures.
Of course. So thank you, Barbara, and I hope that you will go into Art Presence to look for Barbara's books. They are very, very stunning. Yes. The next book that we're going to discuss is Ken Gregg's lovely, beautiful little book called A Year in Jacksonville. And would you share the book cover of that, David? A Year in Jacksonville shows what Jacksonville looks like in the present. The other books that Ken says that he has seen about Jacksonville are really, and because there's so much history here and it's such an interesting place to live, that he says all the books that he had seen are about Jacksonville's past, and he wanted to do something. He says you can save yourself a trip to Tuscany because it's that beautiful here. They're not glossy photos, but they've been treated to look like soft, colorful paintings. And they're all accompanied by poetry that have been written by Ken and his partner, Frank DeLuca. I especially love the woodland trails, and I don't think I have a picture of the woodland trails, but I do have, well, yes, we do. We have the full, let's show the house picture first. Sorry.
Oh, there.
That's a lovely, that's right around the corner from us. I love that. And the other one was number 8, Rails to Trails. So we have 18 miles of trails around Jacksonville, and this just shows you what it's like to wander around this beautiful, beautiful area. The next book is Frank DeLuca's book that has just been released. It's called Kindness, a Guide for Humans Based on the Enneagram. David, would you let the angel right into the waiting room, into the room, as it were? You really don't need to know anything about the Enneagram to appreciate the absolute wealth of very loving information that is in this book. Dr. DeLuca shares ideas about the whole idea of understanding each other. And David, could you show the Kindness book cover? I'm not going to get into discussing the Enneagram tonight, but it is a wonderful system of typing people by personalities. There are 9 types within the Enneagram, and it really is about just understanding each other and trying to see the world through someone else's eyes. If we have our reactions to things, we have our responses to things, and we tend to base all of our decisions and judgments on our own view of the world. But the Enneagram allows us it gives us a glimpse into how other people see the world from their perspective. Do you have anything to add to that, Lynn?
I did. I really liked his Maya Angelou quote. He said, I've learned people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people never forget how you make them feel. And I thought he gave really easy, sound suggestions on how you can help make different people feel understood and feel better, to see life through their eyes. And I thought how we need that so badly these days.
Mm-hmm.
Develop some understanding of one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then I loved his ending. In fact, he emphasizes this several times. He says, be kind to yourself and carry on.
Beautiful. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to Lynn. And Lynn is going to read now her first grizzly bear up close. So if you would show the bear in a tree, I don't know if this went with that story, but we're going to show the illustration of the bear in the tree. Okay.
Go with this one, but it is fun. On our 1995 trip to Denali in Alaska, Grandpa Jack and I boarded the wildlife viewing bus that takes visitors through the park. Bus drivers in Denali are experts at spotting wildlife and take great pride in pointing out their sightings to all the bus riders. They are extremely informative, and even on the slowest of days, visitors are guaranteed to have the ride of a lifetime. I wasn't disappointed. We saw caribou. To me, they look like real reindeer. I was excited when we saw Dall sheep, moose, eagles, but the highlight was a grizzly bear up close. The driver slowly brought the bus to a halt and very quietly and deliberately spoke to us. Folks, I don't want everyone to move at once. Take your time, move slowly, take turns. We'll keep the bus parked here until everyone has an opportunity to see. Keep your voices soft. He paused for the directions to sink in and then continued in a deep, low volume manner. There is a grizzly feeding on the snowberries just to the right side of the bus, about the middle. That's where we were seated. Do not open any windows. Do not think about hanging out of the bus to take pictures. He was emphatic, but still kept his voice low. It was the sternness and seriousness in his tone that ensured everyone would follow his instructions. I pressed my nose to the glass. Just below our window, there it was. I had absolutely no idea that a grizzly bear could be that huge. Of course, I'd been told, but no description would ever conjure up the immensity of that animal. I couldn't take my eyes off the paw. That one paw, just about 24 to 30 inches away from the bus, was larger than my entire head. The claws alone looked to be twice as long and 3 times as thick as my biggest finger, each one like a wild boar's tooth. And the head of that grizzly bear, the head was the size of a big, full backpack, the body as big as a car. It was a honey blonde colored bear with thick matted fur, which appeared to be quite coarse. The grizzly never looked up at us. It never stopped eating the snowberries. We sat there for a long time until everyone had a chance to watch that bear eating by the roadside. Grandpa Jack and I had many other opportunities to observe grizzly bears on that trip. One was probably about 20 feet away, too close for sure, and others in the distance, but none were as close up, just a few feet away as that first grizzly. I'll never forget it. The most awesome animal sighting of my life.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our next book is Aunt in the Amazon, and that is written by Diane Wallace. Diane is an author. This is a true adventure story, by the way, of a 5-day trip that Diane took down the Amazon while she was alone for 2 months in South America. She is an author, artist, world traveler, and constant collector of information. As Diane says, some of that information becomes a story, and some of it becomes an art project. She describes herself as a creator of things. Could you show that picture of the cover of Aunt in the Amazon? This is a taste of, well, the cover and of what the drawings are like on the inside. It is entirely done by hand. Originally, the coloring in and the drawings are all done by Diane. And the interesting thing about this book is that it is written in both Spanish and English. And the almost paragraph by paragraph, you'll have the English version and the Spanish version. And it's the first thing I've seen that is written in that way. And it took her ages to talk about getting the words right. She really had to work again. She had translators and educators and teachers and all kinds of people helping her to put this book together into languages. So I really respect that and honor that. It's a lovely little book. I recommend it highly. And Diane is a charming local who has got her hands in all kinds of interesting projects. So she would love to see you at Art Presence. You have anything to add, Lynn?
Yes, this book was so dear to my heart because of the fact that it's bilingual. Finding really good bilingual books, that's a difficult task. And then I thought it was so animated and so intriguing. And I wrote down a couple of things I found very amusing. Stick-built houses look like a big insect on skinny legs. She thought a caiman might want to snack on an ant. She fell out of a canoe in surprise at seeing the biggest spider in the whole world. She couldn't find the door to the bathroom because there wasn't one. And I thought this unusual illustrated version of her trip down the Amazon could be enjoyed by anybody of any age. As an adult, I could so easily picture myself coloring and reading alongside a child. It was funny and suspenseful at the same time. What was that scream in the night?
Right. Yes, that's great. Yes. Well, so definitely go to Art Presence, pick up these books there. So A Diary of a Reindeer. What do you say about the Diary of a Reindeer? I'm going to read to you precisely what Tom Glassman, who is the author of Diary of a Reindeer, wrote to me when I said, how'd you get the words right? He said, you know, he says Cosmic Origin as I Remember by Tom Glassman. Here is the cover of the book. It's a little book. It's a stocking stuffer for adults, as Lynn says.
Mhm.
But Tom says, whenever I go around the country speaking about all the books I plan to write someday, people always ask me where I get my ideas. Well, it's actually kind of embarrassing because I can't take all the credit. The truth is that Shakespeare usually appears along with Elvis and 8 tiny reindeer and hands me a typed transcript of a rough story outline. However, in the specific instance of Diary of a Reindeer, the idea, as well as the text and diary entries, were actually told to me by one of the reindeer featured in this soon-to-be classic holiday opus. What do you say about the day in the life of a reindeer? I think you just have to buy it and read it. It's a story unlike any other. Would you agree? Yes.
I would agree. And I also think it is for adults just a delightful stocking stuffer.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we're going to talk about me. Oh my, we're going to discuss the First You Grow the Pumpkin, which is a book I wrote and published in 2016. I will say about myself that in this book, it is 100 cool things to make or preserve. And people ask me not where I get my ideas, but where do I come up with these crazy titles? And First You Grow the Pumpkin came out of a conversation with my younger brother, who was asking me for a recipe, and this happened to be about pumpkin pie. And I said, oh, well, first you grow the pumpkin. And he said, you are the only person I know who just about every time I ask for a recipe, it starts with first you grow the whatever it is, peas or carrots. This happened to be pumpkin. But it's a collection of all my favorite and very, very doable things that you can make for gifts, lots of holiday gift items, and everything from pesto to soup stock and cookies and various other kinds of baked goods. It's one of my favorite books. Lynn, have something to say about me and my book?
Yes, yes. You said that you offer this as a contribution toward growing a better world, and it is. It's a lovely contribution. And I thought it was another great possibility for a stocking stuffer. And then I regard it as a valuable resource to have on hand. You mentioned pesto, but the salad dressings, granola, ghee, there's so much, even measurements and conversions. I thought anyone on your list would be delighted to receive this book from you. It is a resource to have on hand.
Yes, David teases me that my measurements and conversions goes from everything from ounces to miles translated into, inches, and I just did it all. I just gave you all the measurements I could possibly think of.
They're there.
They're there. They're there. And as a very dedicated do-it-yourself person, I really think that handmade gifts are the best, and perishable things that, as long as, if you can send them in the mail, but the things that other people might not make for themselves and would really love to have around. I really think it's a good little book.
I do too.
So thank you. Okay, now we're back to Lynn Ransford. So let's talk about picking huckleberries on Brown Mountain. Now, I think my bear illustration here is, if you'll show that, David, this will be it's you guys, of course. It's probably not at all, doesn't go with the story at all, but it's really cute.
Huckleberry hunting is one of our favorite Oregon activities. Grandpa Jack and I have several good spots on the Brown Mountain trails, nearly always fruitful. As long as I meander to and from the trail, I don't get lost like I do when we mushroom hunt, but I still do lose Grandpa. I stop at the first berries I see. Grandpa goes on ahead to find better places where the berries are thicker. Each time I vow to do that, but the first berries I spot just seem to call, pick me, pick me. Grandpa usually does gather more, but I get just about as many as I can carry, filling up the 2 half-gallon plastic milk jugs I secure to my belt. Well, on one huckleberry outing, I was happily and peacefully picking berries. Then I heard something rustling in the bushes nearby. "Jack?" I called. No answer. He must be way ahead on the trail, I thought. I stopped picking and looked in the direction of the twig crackling sounds. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I went back to picking. A few minutes later, I again heard the crackling and crunching of brush nearby. My heart gave a few thumps. I froze. What was that? Something is over there. Now I was worried. If it wasn't Grandpa Jack, it was something much larger than a bird, that was for sure. I reached inside my shirt to pull out my whistle, but would Grandpa Jack hear it? Even with our hearing aids, sometimes we don't hear each other's shouts or whistles. And would a loud noise frighten whatever the source of that sound was? Would the moving creature be more apt to attack me if it was startled or felt threatened? What should I do? Why didn't I stick closer and keep Grandpa in sight? Now my throat felt dry. I was sure I wouldn't be able to shout, maybe not even able to blow my whistle. All I could do was stand, frozen in place, berry bushes up to my waist. What kind of animal could that be? Gadzooks, I knew. Bears love berries, and here I was in the midst of that bear's berry patch, stealing its food. I knew you weren't supposed to run. Running can trigger a bear's instinct to chase. Holding my hands up high and waving them gently to make me look bigger but not too aggressive, I know that's what they recommend if you encounter a bear. Still, I stood there, listening to that monster come closer. And then I saw it. Yikes! So black, so big, taller than I imagined a black bear to be. I caught glimpses of shiny black fur, patches of black working their way toward me through the bushes. I couldn't see its face. Could a bear be that tall, crouched over, eating berries? My heart was really pounding now, racing. I could feel the pounding in my chest, hear it in my ears. My palms were sweaty. The creature was moving so slowly. Surely it must know I'm here. Well, it's not attacking, that's something. Take a breath, try to work your way backwards. Be careful not to trip over the bushes. I suppose the animal could hear my movements. Then I was sure it did. It looked up. A cow, a big black shiny cow. Thank God. It blinked at me benignly and went back to chomping berry bushes. Dear God, thank you.
Oh, so, you know, we have a little bit of extra time here before I move on to the next person. And I was just thinking, what is your writing process? How do you prepare yourself to write? Do you have like a special time of day, or do you just pick up a pen, or do you sit down at your computer and say, I'm going to work on huckleberries today?
I wish it was that regular or organized. Just memories will pop in, or talking to a family member, I'll be reminded of an event. And then I usually have so much going on, I'll just scribble a note, write about huckleberries later. And then when it comes time to writing, I find I just sit down and take myself back to that place and just try to describe that scene and recall what my feelings were. But the biggest resource, as I said, is from the little voice in the back seat, because she had me tell these stories over and over and over again. So they've been written in my head for a very long time. And it's just getting them down on paper so that I'm not too repetitive, or I captured some drama to keep grandchildren amused.
You know, your process sounds a little bit like mine as a cookbook author. Throughout my whole cooking career, I would collect recipes on the small size. I'd scribble things down on the small size legal pads. And I have reams and reams and reams of these notes of just lists of ingredients or the idea of whatever it is that I was working on. My favorite one is this warm wild rice salad recipe that I believe is in the pumpkin, but first you grow the pumpkin, my son's favorite recipe, and my son's favorite salad. It's called warm wild rice salad. And how can I say this? I imagined that while I was sitting at the Rutherford Grill in California, eating their warm wild rice salad. And I had a cocktail napkin on my knee and a pen. And I would taste something and I go, that's balsamic vinegar. Oh yeah, there's corn in there. And I keep all these notes on this cocktail napkin. So I have boxes and boxes of cocktail napkins and small legal pad things. And so when I'm ready to write something, I just gather all those notes and it just sort of happens because I don't have to make anything up, at least when it comes to writing cookbooks. It's all in my notes that I've collected since about 1950. So I have all kinds of things that are prompters to help me get into that mode like you do. It's just like, just get out the notes and have at it.
Mm-hmm. And I have live prompters. My son was visiting last week and said, Mom, on your critters book, did you tell about the Saluki? And I said, oh, I forgot about the Saluki. And my husband said, what in the world is that? So we had a great time doing research on his phone and scribbling notes and sharing our memories. And so that's one of the stories coming up.
What is a Saluki?
It's a hunting dog that's been used for over 3,000 years in the Middle East, beginning in Egypt. And we didn't know its origin. We lived in the Middle East for a year, and we just knew them as the wild dogs of Bahrain. And my son did befriend one and bring one home. And so together we wrote that story, recalling that funny little shy Saluki that followed him home.
That's great. Thank you. Now we get to talk about my partner's book, which is our Lucky Valley Press total bestseller of all time. We've been doing this for 11 years, and his book is the most popular. And I will give you my short version of David Gordon's bio. David is a lifelong professional musician, writer, lecturer, and historian. He's the author of Carmel Impresarios, which is a cultural biography of these two extraordinary women who helped establish the arts and the Carmel Bach Festival in Carmel, California. This publication, The Little Bach Book, explores the daily life of J.S. Bach. It's not about the music. It's about what Bach was doing and how he was living while he was writing with a dip pen. Thank you. That's the cover of the book. And this is a note from a review of the Little Bach Book. One need not be a time traveler to visit the era of Johann Sebastian Bach. One need only read the Little Bach Book by renowned Bach tenor David Gordon to become immersed in the minutiae of the life and times of the famous composer. So Lynn, I would like you to, I know that you really enjoyed this book and you had such incredible notes. I wanted to hear some of the things that you had to say about the Little Bach Book.
It was my biggest surprise of all the books that we reviewed. David promised at the beginning to amuse, enlighten, educate, and surprise both novice Bach listeners and those who are more experienced. Well, I'm a very novice Bach listener, and I was totally drawn in to the tales of Bach as a real person. Not only the artist as a real person, but also real life in the 18th century. And his portrayals are so real. There were details of clothing and of laundry day, which only occurred a few times a year, but tiny things, details of fleas, greasy, sticky wigs, dry shampoos. I learned that water was rarely used on hair or even on bodies. In fact, washing was rare. But David gives us details of kitchens, of cooking, of typical meals. everything was so thoroughly described that you felt like you were intimately acquainted with Bach and his family. The facts about daily life years ago were so fascinating. And I thought, I must be so intrigued by this because of my work in the historic Jacksonville Cemetery and Meet the Pioneers. We try to portray characters from history so that history is brought to life. David does that so remarkably, not just as a good textbook or any book might, but truly as a live entertainer would. I couldn't put the book down.
That's great. Yes, I love the little Bach book. My life is surrounded by music and, of course, a lot of Bach in our lives. And I love the process of writing because I learned so much when David's writing. Well, we both do. We both learn about things through each other's books. And it certainly brought a whole new dimension into my life. So let's talk about me again. The Soup Kit is, I think, my best book so far. I think it's because I love soup, and I think that soup has been, people just kind of, you could say, oh, you just throw all this stuff in a pot and bring it to a boil and then call it soup. But there's a real art to soup, and it is really all about the mise en place, about creating your kit, creating your space around you, and having all of your parts together, knowing how to make stock, knowing when to put the stock in, knowing how to do the proteins first, and the order in which you put all of these things together. And I think that the surprising and the revealing thing, or the revelation really for me when I was putting this book together, was that I used 7 or 8 spice combinations from different cultures. And I realized that the spices are what give it that cultural difference, but the process is always the same. And the process really is about the timing and the order in which you put things into the pot, and layering flavor so that you get more flavor if you brown the meat and then put the vegetables in, or the mirepoix, which is the carrots, onions, and celery, into it, and then building it from there. So it really is a process that once you get the process down, you can make soup and use spices of any culture. But it is and the pictures are all mine, and they're all, I love all these pictures in this book because they're using our friend Gates McKibben collection of not only soup bowls, but I said to her at one point when we were looking at all these soup bowls to create all these pictures, I said, God, wouldn't it be great if I had some really interesting spoons? And we happened to be in her kitchen, and she said, oh, spoons. And she went over to a drawer and opened this drawer that was full of Bakelite soup spoons and other paraphernalia, other utensils. But we got out all these gorgeous, colorful, what Bakelite is, with all the different colored handles and things. And so I built all these pictures with my soup. Her papers are all also Gates's papers. She works the paper a lot, are the backgrounds for all my soup. And I have these beautiful bowls and things to put together. So this was a real joy for me to put together, and to really be able to simplify the act of soup making for just the sort of normal, everyday, regular cook.
Well, Ginna, you said soup comes naturally to you, all the way back to your memories of your grandparents' kitchen on the farm, and
Yes.
the aromas there, that now you say you maintain those very aromas in your own kitchen.
I do.
And I just loved it when you said in the fall you long for soup, and in winter you live on soup. And we do too.
It's true.
And now with the weather so cold, soup is even better. And I kept thinking, well, Your book is perfect for right now.
It is.
Here, cold weather is here. And you lay out, as you say, just recipes like a really easy to follow map. And so that anybody can create these concoctions, what you call the memorable concoctions. And you said that everything is here to create your own soup repertoire. And as I looked through this, I thought, what a repertoire it is. And then the photography makes it even better. So this is, it's a culinary, it's a literary, and an incredibly picturesque book to have. It's a gem.
Thank you. They're not fine art. It's not fine art photography, but it's instructional, I think, photography. And it is all photos from our kitchen and things that I have made over the years. And I love it because it's so, for me, it's really to me, soup is embracing. It always makes somebody feel better if you have a good bowl. It's like a cup of tea in England, have a warm bowl of soup. So I really enjoyed this, and I thought that I would bring it out for the holidays because it is, like you say, it is perfect for right now. It's 30 degrees here right at the moment. Look at me. I'm wearing wrist warmers, scarves. I have 2 layers on. I need my soup. And I feel rich when I have a freezer full of stock. I made stock over the Thanksgiving holiday from the most beautiful turkey I've ever made. And I felt so good filling up those containers and putting it into the freezer so that I always have something to make gravies or sauces or soup. And it's so soothing to have and comforting to have something like that you can just get out. And in fact, we're having turkey soup for dinner tonight because I had it in the freezer.
And I did think the pictures were works of art.
Thank you.
Pictures.
I did have a good time. I really, I do have a good time. So our final book on the review arena here tonight is The Color Historic Jacksonville. And this was done by our director at Art Presence, Ann Brooke Hawkins. And actually, I want to read to you a little bit about Ann. This is what she says on the inside of her Color Historic Jacksonville. Could you show that book cover, please, David? Living in Jacksonville, Oregon for 24 years gives me a special vision of the many facets of this historic community. Driving into town, a traffic sign reduces your speed from 45 miles per hour to 25. You see the town in the distance as you put your foot on the brake, and with a sigh, you think, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Coloring books have enjoyed a surge in popularity. It satisfies so many needs in the short term, is creative, and maybe reduces the stresses of the day. When asked to create images of these precious buildings in our town, there was never a question. Approximately 3 months later, I had 25 line drawings ready to color and quotes about history for the back of each image. Then a presentation in our local cemetery called Meet the Pioneers gave me more insight into the history of our town. In a special program, actors pick an historic resident or family buried in the Jacksonville cemetery. This is what Lynn does when she's not doing this or writing books. And she said that they do a short offering about their lives. I learned so much more, and I added 3 new images. I love this too. She even adds, Anne is always a teacher, and she adds a little bit of information about how you can make your coloring experience better. I recommend Prismacolor pencils and a limited palette. Use a blue and a red to make purple, a blue and a yellow to make green, and a red and yellow to make orange. Lay down one of the colors and add the second color in another direction. The process I used on the color, which is great. I loved how she, like Diane, half colored it in to show you how it works. So I recommend this book too, because coloring is very soothing and comforting. And it takes you into another special place. You have anything to say about that? Oh, Pioneer, Meet the Pioneers actor. I'm sure she was watching you and she didn't even know you yet.
I appreciated what you've shared already with Anne's suggestions about how to color it so that your own work could turn out as pretty as her cover. But then I so liked the quotes that she included. And one of my favorites was from Marcus Garvey: "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." And then she went on to say what you emphasized too, that there's such a new surge in popularity in coloring books. This is such an informative, educational one. But she said that maybe coloring is one of those things that can reduce the stresses of the day. And I thought, oh my, is that needed right now?
Yes, yes, it certainly is. So you'll notice I've recommended several coloring books in this show. Thank you. So now we come to the end of our program. We have just the perfect amount of time left for Lynn to read her final story. It happens to be my favorite story in the book. It's called When Grandpa Was Chased by Three Grizzlies.
And it's one of the grandchildren's favorite. They say, we want to hear about when Grandpa cried. Did he really cry? And he really did. Grandpa tells this story best. He begins when I flew to Anaktuvuk Pass in Alaska. I was going to backpack on my own. I thought that before I headed into the Brooks Range, I would check in at the ranger station to find out if there was anything special I should know or any forms I should fill out. I told the ranger my plans. He asked, "Do you have a gun?" "No, I didn't bring a gun." "Do you want me to sign anything or get a permit?" Jack wondered. "No," said the ranger. "You need to understand that this is a no rescue environment. We don't need to know your name or have you sign anything. You don't come out, we don't go in to look for you." Nevertheless, Grandpa headed out on his trek through the wet, mucky tundra, thrilled to be out there on top of the world, perhaps walking in territory where no human had ever been. Grandpa could see for vast distances across rolling mountains and was even lucky enough to see wolverines, very secretive, hard to spot, vicious little mammals. He decided to climb to the top of a mountain to see the horizon where the sun does not set. And there in the distance, he saw them, three grizzlies lumbering up toward him, nearly the distance of a football field away. Grandpa knew how to act around bears. It's important not to surprise them. That's why they always tell you to make noise, sing, or carry bear bells to let them know you're coming. Grandpa thought, I'd better introduce myself. Just as hikers are instructed to do, he raised his hands high above his head, waving his arms slowly back and forth. "Hi, bears," he said. The bears, a female and her two probably year-old cubs, stood on their hind feet. "Geez, they're big," thought Grandpa. And they are. A grizzly bear's paw is bigger than a man's head. Each claw alone is the length of a person's face. Each claw looks like a saber-toothed tiger's tooth. A grown bear can stand 10 feet tall and weigh over 1,000 pounds. The bears definitely spotted Grandpa. They turned around. It appeared to Grandpa they were headed up and over the mountain. "Ha," thought Grandpa, "they're going away just like they're supposed to." Then he realized what was really happening. They weren't going away at all. They started running straight toward him. Grandpa looked for a place to hide. There were none. No trees within 300 miles. Of course, a bear can climb a tree, and these bears were big enough to easily knock down any tree. Grandpa knew he couldn't run. Remember, you're never supposed to run if you see a bear. If you run, it triggers their instincts to chase. and a bear in pursuit can run as fast as a racehorse. That's how fast these bears were approaching Grandpa. He groaned. He knew his last chance was to lie down and play dead. I can't lie down and pretend to be dead, he thought. They may not kill me then, but I'll be mauled so badly I'll wish I was dead. I just can't do it. I know I'm done for, and it's going to be grisly, pardon the expression. The bears kept coming straight at him. There was nothing Grandpa could do. He closed his eyes and cried. That's not the end of the story, but I think we've come probably to the end of our time.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end because you'll have to buy the book to find out what happened to Grandpa. Thank you so much, Lynn, for being with us tonight. This has been so much fun, and I appreciate your partnership in being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thanks to Ann Brooke Hawkins for being our intrepid director at Art Presence. Thank you to David Gordon for being Oz, the man behind the curtain who makes everything somehow work while we're just here talking to each other. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thanks very much. Have a good weekend. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.